Hello and welcome to another video tutorial. This is T9 case problem 1, Stardust Stories. And in this tutorial, we are working with JavaScript. So the problem can be found in Module 9, Getting Started with JavaScript, the case problem 1, Stardust Stories. So if we get right into it, the first thing that they ask us to do is, just like all of our other code labs, is just put in today's date. So normally we'll have two files here in which we put the author's name and today's date. Okay, so let's do that right off the bat before we get into anything else. All right, so we have those two files set, and we're going to be working with these two files in this code lab. So if we start from the very beginning, and we've actually dealt with this Stardust Stories before with our gradients and our graphic design tutorial, but here we are working with JavaScript. So the story is Dr. Andrew Weiss of Thomas and Lee College maintains an astronomy page. And this page allows amateur stargazers to look at what's called a planisphere. So this is kind of a way in which you can gauge constellations in the current sky based on the time of day. Okay, so we'll be able to dynamically set the date and show stars or constellations rather that are visible in the current time and date. So when the user rotates the second disk to the current date and time, the constellations will appear in the window correspondingly. And it's just a neat dynamic effect that we can add to a web page. So let's get started. Okay. So the gist of it is there's 24 files in the file tree, and you can see here in the file tree 0 through 23, or 24, or 23 rather, and this represents 24 different rotations in the sky. We also have a SD_stars. This is the kind of the window that the user can look through, and here we have kind of the final result, what we're working toward. Okay, so this will chart constellations in the sky, and if you're an average astronomer or amateur astronomer, these things are really neat because you can pinpoint in real time what you're looking at, essentially. Okay, so here are the general instructions. The build website button essentially is, if we look at the live preview, this button right here, the refresh button, that's what they're referring to as far as the build website. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the first task that they want us to do, and we've already done this, is put our name and today's date. That's all said and done. And then they want us to link the actual JS file, in this case SD_mapper, to the HTML document. And just like our CSS files, we are going to put in our script tag right below everything else and right before the closing head tag. So let's go ahead and do that right off the bat. So sdmapper.js. And we're actually going to defer the loading till after all the DOM elements in the page have loaded. Okay, so the document object model. Basically, you have all the elements on a web page will load first in this scheme, and then our JS will run. Okay, so JS or JavaScript being a single-threaded programming language, everything read from the top down, you can actually defer it, or you can have it run asynchronously or normally, which is synchronous. Okay, but you have to be careful because if you have a lot of JavaScript, it can block normal operations and lead to a compromised user experience. All right, so let's study the contents of the HTML file. we have links to style sheets. We have a meta tag with character encoding, a tab title. We have a navigation list with links to pages like moons, planets, stars, so on. We have a header with sort of an image as a banner, and an article or main kind of content, as well as a section that looks to be positioned to the right. Okay. All right. And a simple footer. So not unlike any other web page we have built so far or have seen, the components that we use in a web page to build a whole site. Okay. All right. So let's move on to 3 of 4. So now we're on this empty JavaScript file. Okay. And we have the contents here with our name and today's date. And I'm just going to move the contents down too, because in this tutorial, they want us to use strict. Okay. Oh, sorry. This was just in, let's see, 3 of 4, and we are going to use strict. So how we do that again, and we've done this before, is we just type in the double quotes, use strict, and semicolon. So what this does is, because JavaScript was intentionally designed with a novice programmer in mind, it means that you can make syntax errors or other errors that won't be caught. And when you run the program or during runtime, these errors will present themselves because of syntactical errors. But when we use strict, this means that everything has to be correct in order for the program to run at all. Okay, and this is just a way. Other languages have what's called type safety, and they require compilation. You won't even get to that point as far as compilation if there's any syntax errors. So JavaScript has a lot of leeway in that regard, but we can remedy that just with this use strict declaration right at the top. Okay, so let's start with the first step here. So we're doing some variable declarations, but as with all of our coding, the best practice is to write in comments, even with the variable declarations, because we want the user or even ourselves reviewing it at a later time to understand exactly what we've done, in case we have to review things, make things better, make changes, that sort of thing. Okay, so the first things first is we are just going to write a comment on what we're going to do here first, and we are going to determine the current date and time. All right, so let's close this file tree so we can have a better look of what's going on in the file. All right, and we have a variable declaration. So to declare a variable in JavaScript, we just use this var declaration, and then we have the variable name, and we set it to equal to, in this case, they actually want us to create a new date object. So to explain, JavaScript has these built-in objects, functions, methods, that sort of thing, and we can use them for our coding. The date object is really important because we can get the current date, we can set a date, and it allows us to add this dynamic element to our page. So let's put in the date that they specified, so February 3rd, 2018. And this is at 3:15:28 a.m. We have the full time just right in there. And I'm sorry, I should just correct this. Sorry. So this is 2018, and we actually leave the add out. Don't put the add in there. So it's going to be the date, and I'm just going to make some room here just so students can see the formatting. So February 3rd, 2018, and the date. So with this date object, you can supply as an argument a time that you specify, or you could leave it empty, which would give you the exact date and time, okay? All right, so that's it for the first variable declaration this time. So we have a new date object and a new instance of the date object, and we've supplied our own time, okay? Now they want us to use toLocalString to save the text of this time in the time string variable. So this will stringify the output of this time, and we're just going to house it in a new variable. So time string equals this time toLocalString. And it's, again, toLocalString is a method that we can use to return this date in a human readable format, or to a string, in other words, okay? All right, and so that is all set. Let's go to this third item. So change the inner HTML code of the page element with the ID timestamp to the value of the time string variable. Okay, so we're going to actually use the document object, okay, because we know the document object is a way to get or search the page for IDs or class names or things like that. And we can, Cengage has an autofill we can utilize. Please note the capitalization, it's in camel case convention. And we're just going to plug in the timestamp ID, okay? But we're not done because it says change the inner HTML. So this is another method that we can use. And we are actually dynamically setting the contents of the timestamp element with an ID of timestamp to this time string. So somewhere on the page, it's going to have this timestamp that we've converted to a string, and we've placed inside this time string. Excuse me. Let me change the wording. There we go. Just double check your spelling to this timestamp element. Okay, nice and easy. Right there. So determine the current date and time, set it to a string, input that string into the element on the page. And that's it. Okay, so let's see if we have any checks that we can do, because we don't want to get, and I'm going to just deselect these. And I know these haven't passed yet, but I'm going to check the first one and see if that passed. Okay, so this checked out. So let's just go step by step. So the first check passed. And if you need to review the code, please do. Recall that capitalization does matter. So you want to make sure everything is, or as is rather, what's displayed on this page right now. Okay, so you can pause the video if you need to. So let's kind of go to this SkyMap variable heading. And next, we're going to determine which SkyMap to show. So we have, again, in the file tree, a series of PNGs. And these are essentially the SkyMaps that we're going to be shown. So we need to dynamically choose which SkyMap is relevant to the current date and time. And this is how we're going to do it, okay? So first, we're going to start with a comment, because we want, again, to explain exactly what we're doing. So this second comment is going to be determine the SkyMap image to use for the current date and time, okay? Okay, just give that a space, and now we can begin. Okay, so the first step, first create a variable named this hour. So let's do that. So we have var this hour is equal to, we're going to use this time because we've supplied the time, and we're using what's called a getHours method. Okay, so this, and I have, oh, excuse me. I can just go up here. Just on W3 Schools, they have all these methods, and there's quite a bit of them in JavaScript that students can pore over and kind of look at because they're very helpful. So the get hours, if we examine it, returns the hour from 0 to 23. So we have 23 SkyMap images. So we're going to supply this input here, or this number from 0 to 23, and we'll be able to grab the file using that number. Okay. So here we're just getting the hours from the date, and all right, and we're extracting it from the this time variable, which was declared up here or defined. Okay. All right, so that's done. Next step is create a variable named this month using the get month. So we're going to have this month is equal to this time, and it's going to be a get month. Okay. We're going to see why we want to get the hours and the month, okay? Because we know that months can vary in the number of days, right? We can go from 28 all the way to 31. So this is an important piece. Plus, we want to get the hours from our time, okay? And we'll see how this all comes together. Okay, so that variable declaration is all done. Okay, now we really need to focus because here's where it gets kind of, I guess, complicated. So the number of the map to use. So if we look again at the file tree, these are denoted by these numbers. Okay, and it's very important because we're going to recall the actual image via these numbers. And so they have a formula for this. So they say, use the given hour and month. The number of the map to use with the given hour or month is calculated with the following formula. So we have 2 times the month plus the hour, and then we have this percentage symbol. That's called the remainder operator, or what's called a modulus operator, where we kind of factor in 2 numbers and we get the remainder. And you can see it's divided by 24, and then we'll have a remainder result given to us, okay, where month is the value of this month and hour is this hour. Okay, store the value of this formula in the map num. So we're going to have a map num var, and we're going to equal it to this, basically this month, and we're going to times it by 2. We're going to plus it by this hour, okay? And just like in the wording says. And the order of operations is important because it's going to do everything within the brackets first. And then we're going to use this remainder operator 24. Okay, so what this is going to give us is essentially a number from 0 to 23. And whatever remainder that is will be a number on the scale corresponding to the numbers in the images. Okay, so we take the month, we times it by 2. And we plus it by this hour, we divide it by 24, and this will give us approximately the month, or sorry, the number 0 through 23 that corresponds to the particular sky map, okay? And again, this falls back all the way to this time where we set the date with a new date object, okay? All right. So we can actually proceed. Just make sure your syntax is like that, okay? Next, we are going to use HTML code showing the particular sky image, so 0 through 23, to use in the web page. So this is how we dynamically create the view using this number from the date object, okay? So it goes a little bit like, well, it'll go like this. So they want us to create a new variable. And this variable is going to be called image string, because essentially that's what it is, okay? And the image string is an image tag linking to sd underscore sky map.png, okay? And just be careful of the wording. But what we're actually going to use here is called string interpolation, okay? And this is where you can, sorry, where did I find that? Where you can essentially create a dynamic output by having a string, a predetermined string, interpolated by a variable that's dynamic. So how we do this is we take the standard image tag. Okay, so this is going to be rendered on the page, but we're actually interpolating or adding to it using this syntax. Okay, so we take the image tag, we split it in half, and you can see that we have single quotes. That's for the source attribute, because we have to encase this first half of the image tag in double quotes. Okay, but we know that this isn't the entire image tag. Okay, so this is essentially just gonna tack on the number to the end of the image or inside the image. So what we actually have to do is do this. Okay, so if we look at the file tree, we have SD Sky, and then we have a number. So this is the format that we're looking for. So if we go back to our syntax, basically it's going to be like this. We have to put this map number variable, which is going to be 0 through 24, a dynamic number, and we have to tag it on to this image source file name. Okay, and the way we do that is we enclose the first half in double quotes. We use these plus symbols to insert the variable on both sides, and then we actually close the tag as though it were an a regular file. So in this case, we need the PNG, and we have that closing single quote, and then we should have a closing bracket for the image tag, and then finally a double quote. So you can see on both sides of the image tag, we have it enclosed in double quotes, and then we have a single quote just because we're dynamically inserting a number inside the file name. Okay, so when it gets rendered, it could be either one of 23 images that we're looking for. Okay, and we're going to use a semicolon right at the end. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. This could be your first foray into string interpolation and concatenation. Essentially, you can manipulate strings to get a desired result. In this case, we are displaying a dynamic image on the web page, okay, just by manipulating the file name. And we attach the PNG file extension right at the end, and that's going to reference one of these files in our list, okay, one of 23. All right, so just make sure your syntax is as shown. All right, and of course the map num is the remainder result here that in the variable we just declared. Okay. So it's easy to get tripped up on that segment. So just examine the syntax of the image tag because all we've really done with it is, again, encompassed it by double quotes, split it in half, added a dynamic number to the file name because when we display it on the page, it's going to be one of those images in the file tree. All right. So now our last step here, at least with this image, is to insert it into the page. Okay, so that's where this insert adjacent HTML method comes in. All right, so we're going to create another line, but we should probably create a new comment here. Let's go ahead and do that. So we have opening and closing comment. Just like that, and we'll just describe what we're doing here. So we're inserting the code for the inline image of the sky map. just like so. Okay, and we'll put a space there. And then we want to use the document object again, because we're looking for this ID PlanetSphere. So get element by ID, and we're going to put in double quotes this PlanetSphere. Okay, and just make sure the spelling is correct. Got another H in there. Perfect. But we're not done because we have to add this insert JSON HTML tag. And this inserted JSON HTML takes two arguments. So one is the position property, so it's before begin. I believe there's a few others, but this is where we want our position. So actually, it's actually after begin, sorry. So after the beginning, basically the inserted JSON HTML works similarly to the inner HTML, but it sets it adjacent in spots where it's juxtaposed. It can be in the beginning or at the end, and not right in the middle, okay? And that's where this after begin positioning argument comes in. And then finally, it takes the actual that we want to put in there, or the content. Okay, and that is the image string that we've developed up here. Okay, so that's the whole reason for the string interpolation is we're dynamically setting this image variable and inserting it into the page. Okay, using the date-time calculation, string interpolation, and then finally this insert adjacent HTML method to put it inside the page. Okay. All right, so there's a lot going on there. So I want students to kind of just get an overview of the syntax and make sure, you know, some areas or all the syntax is good. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, so we can run our checks. Let's run our second check. So our second check passed, and let's run our third check. That passed as well. Okay, so all the syntax is good. All right, and let's go on to 404. So we can go back to this map file now. And now that all this JavaScript is entered, let's try and get a preview of what it should look like. And you can see we have the time set. If I expand this to the browser, we have the time set up above here in that toLocale string, and then with the time that we supplied. And then we also have the unique sky map image from 0 to 23 displayed on the page, okay, given the current time. So you can see how this would be useful to us amateur astronomers viewing the night sky looking for certain constellations. Okay, really neat stuff. All right, so if you have some areas where you're troubleshooting, it's not working, there's a few rules of thumb you can look at to troubleshoot. First is the script tag. Make sure the syntax is correct and the file name is correct. Also, if you're looking at the JavaScript, there's quite a few areas you can make a mistake. So just be careful with the syntax, proper capitalization, semicolons, and things like that, okay, and camel case. All right. It goes on to say that you can validate your HTML code with W3C, the Worldwide Consortium. And when you're all done, you can go into tasks and just make sure everything is in green as far as the checks and submit the result. Okay, but that wraps up our CodeLab T9 case problem Stardust Stories. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.